I had been married for 18 years and still didn't know my wife. It was probably my fault for not trying harder. We seemed to get along great, but there was no real connection between us. I never considered her the love of my life, and I had a feeling that the feeling was mutual. But we were compatible enough to have 3 teenage children. I worked in the claims department of a large auto insurance company. It was an office job with good benefits. In 3 years, I would have my pension payments. We owned our home, but the mortgage amount was higher than the current appraised value. Noreen was a good wife in every way. Because of her 3 children, she was a housewife. The house was always clean, clothes were washed and ironed, and the food was excellently prepared. All the housework must have been good exercise for her because she still had the same perfect figure she had in high school when we met. Neither of us were interested in college. We got married a year after I started working. Noreen wanted to get away from her parents and be alone. I wanted regular sex. Because we were comfortable with each other, we seemed like a good couple. Unfortunately, there was no crazy, passionate, fairy tale romance between us. The sex was always good. Until now, I have never felt that there were any problems between us, especially in this area. I guess I was wrong. It started at one of those terrible company parties. I didn't dance, but Noreen did. I had no problem giving her complete freedom of action, just so that she wouldn't bother me. I spent the evening sitting with several other spouses who were not dancing. Unmarried guys entertained their wives and unmarried girls on the dance floor almost all night. The only problem seemed to be that she danced with Dirk Franklin more than I thought was necessary. He was a good dancer, but also a talkative womanizer. Several times during the evening, I lost sight of Noreen for a few moments, but she always reappeared. It wasn't the most fun night for me, but it was a sacrifice I made so my wife could cheer up a little. The most enjoyable sex will be when we return home. A little booze had a big impact on her behavior in bed. It made the time spent at the party more bearable. That evening was especially pleasant. On Monday morning at work, all this disappeared. For the first few hours, everything was fine, but then I started noticing that some guys were glancing in my direction, and some were giggling. I took a closer look and found Dirk chatting casually about his recent conquest. Twice he looked in my direction and smiled, or should I say, smirked at me. Dirk and I are not very close. I don't like this guy, and I didn't appreciate what he did. Just before lunch, I managed to corner one of my most trusted colleagues in the copy room. "Barry, what the hell is going on with Dirk? If that son of a bitch smiles at me again, I'll punch him. I'm not sure if it's true or not, John, but he's bragging to everyone that he fucked Noreen on Saturday night." "This is bullshit. Noreen would never let him near her." "I thought so, but he has panties that he claims belong to her. He shows them to all the guys and even lets them smell them. How could he get her panties? It does not make sense. John, he claims she gave them to him after he had sex with her in one of the hotel conference rooms." "You saw them?" "Yes. They were silk, gray or silver color." "Thank you, Barry. Don't tell anyone anything. I owe you." If Barry had said the panties were red or black, I would have laughed it off. But I was there when Noreen got dressed for the party. She put on her favorite silver silk lingerie set. I bought her a bra and panties for Valentine's Day this year. About 20 minutes later, I noticed Dirk heading to the men's room. This morning, he drank a lot of coffee. I walked right behind him. I'm not a fan of talking on the playground. There was no way I was going to face Dirk and ask him or order him to stop spreading lies about my wife. For one reason, I was no longer sure it was a lie. If I did meet him face to face, it would probably make him wary. I didn't want this. The easiest way to solve the problem would be to hit his head on the tiled wall in front of the urinal. Since I was a gentleman, I waited for him to finish, and then punched him right in the nose as soon as he turned around. Dirk was a big guy, but he offered no resistance and made no attempt to defend himself or fight back. I found silk panties in his pocket and gave him 2 strong kicks in the crotch area. When I came out of the toilet, I noticed that he was vomiting. I left early for lunch, and when I returned, I learned that my employment with the company had been terminated. Dirk was taken to the hospital. It took them less than 20 minutes to complete the design, and I was in the past. Today was a shopping day. I was sitting at the kitchen table when Noreen pulled into the garage. I looked up as she walked into the kitchen with several bags of groceries. "Hello, dear. What are you doing at home in the middle of the day? Are you sick?" I didn't answer when she put the plastic bags on the countertop. "Would you like to help me bring the rest?" I didn't answer, and she went back to the garage. She returned with 6 more bags, but without saying anything, she placed them on the edge of the table. "Is something wrong, John? I can say that. Why are you at home?" Saying this, she began to sort out the bags. I was fired. It does not make sense. Why would they fire you? I sat and tried to figure out how to start a conversation. I'm not very sure about this. In the end, I just threw her panties across the table. Oh God, no. Seeing them, Noreen sat up and grabbed her head with both hands. And no, 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 this can't be. I saw my wife start crying. It wasn't a moan or a lament, but something in between. "Can you explain this to me?" After my question, the crying seemed to intensify. She lowered her head onto the table, and all I could hear was her quietly muttering over and over again, "No, no, no." I waited patiently for almost a minute. My wife tried to wipe the tears from her face and then looked at me. "I'm sorry, John. Really sorry. It was a mistake. I drank too much and made a mistake." "Bullshit. You weren't that drunk. You knew exactly what you were doing, didn't you?" "No, John. You have to believe me. It was a mistake, a terrible mistake. There's nothing between me and Dirk. Honestly, I'm very, very sorry. If it was a mistake, why didn't you tell me about it when it happened? I didn't want you to find out. I didn't mean to hurt you. If you didn't want me to find out, why did you have to do this to the biggest talker in the whole company?" He promised not to tell anyone anything. God, are you so stupid? This morning, he let every guy in the building sniff your panties. Why were you so stupid as to let him take them? I didn't let him take them. I gave them to him so he could throw them away. I used them to dry myself and couldn't put them back on. What were you wiping, Noreen? Why did you use $30 panties to fix yourself up? John, I'm sorry. This shouldn't have happened. Do you mean that I should never have found out about this, or that you should not have done this? Both. Damn it. I screwed up, John. What do you want me to say? What were you wiping, Noreen? You never answered me. He didn't have a condom. I had to dry myself after sex, and panties were the only thing that was at hand. This is just great. How should I react to this? Are you really expecting me to say I forgive you? No. What about the reason? Can you give me a reason why you did it, and not talk nonsense about how you were drunk? I don't buy that for a minute. No, I wasn't that drunk. Dirk and I had a good time all evening. He is a good dancer and a very funny person. He knows what to say to a girl, something that makes you feel good. So you two just wandered into one of the empty conference rooms and made mad, passionate love. No, everything was wrong. How was it? Don't make me do this, John. Don't make me talk about it. Answer, it happened quickly. I didn't understand anything from this. He poked me and it was over, just like that. It took me longer to get myself in order. That's why you have me, isn't it? What do you mean? You understand perfectly well what I mean. What was the first thing you did when we got home? Tell me, Noreen. What did you tell me to do when we were in the bedroom? No, John. It had nothing to do with what Dirk and I did. Honestly. Bullshit. That must have really turned you on. It wasn't enough that you slept with him, but when you came home, you demanded sex. You didn't take a shower. You didn't even wash your face. I feel sick just thinking about it. I caressed you there after him. Do you really think I can forgive you for this? That wasn't the point, John. I was damn horny. Dirk didn't give me any pleasure. You always do this. All I could think about was getting home and getting you into bed. I wanted you, John. I needed you. Sorry, but I don't see it that way. John, you're making a mountain out of a mountain. It didn't mean anything. This means nothing. We can survive this. Noreen, do you really think it was nothing? I lost my job. I lost my pension. I lost my wife and children. I guess it meant nothing to you, but to me it meant everything. My wife just sat there and looked at me as I stood up from my chair. I have to leave now. The police will probably be here soon. I don't want to talk to them now. Why are the police coming? What else is going on, John? I'm afraid I offended your lover a little when I gave you back your panties. That's why I was fired. I'm sure the police have already received a statement from Dirk. Heck, I'll spend a couple of months in jail just so you can get a minute of sex. Thank you so much, dear. Where are you going? What should I do now? I don't know where I'll be. I loaded all my things into the car while you went shopping. I'll call you later. She looked like she was about to turn the plumbing back on. I turned around before walking out the door. I leave it to you to explain what happened to the children. If you lie or twist the truth, I can guarantee you will regret it. There was enough money in the bank accounts to last at least 6 months. Before leaving town, I paid off all my credit cards and canceled them. She could spend the money however she wanted or was forced to, but I didn't want to run out of money. I was sure that she would take care of the children. They'll graduate from school for the summer in a couple of weeks. I didn't know if this would make Noreen's life easier or more difficult. I had no idea what I would do when the money ran out. I wasn't even sure if I would be able to get unemployment benefits since I was fired for cause. The first night I stayed with my brother in Schuylkill He had a small apartment and was more than willing to shelter me under his desk until I found something permanent. The next day I moved into a small furnished one-bedroom apartment that included utilities. There was even a cable for connecting to the internet. Since I left the house, my phone has been turned off. I didn't want to answer the phone, but I knew that sooner or later I would have to talk to the children. Working with Robbie was easy, but not particularly fun. The other 3 guys knew how to climb trees and also pick cherries and grind stumps. My task was to act as an assistant for them. They seemed to appreciate my efforts and were more than willing to teach me all the little tricks and skills. I was busy and tried my best to forget about the problem with Noreen. The only thing I knew for sure was that I would file for divorce as soon as possible. Terry was my eldest daughter. She was smart and sweet as candy. In 2 months, she would graduate from high school and enroll in a dental technician course at a local college. Brian was scheduled to enlist in the Marines as soon as he graduated from high school next year. Sal had 2 more years of school left, and all she wanted was to get married and have children. She once wanted to be a teacher, but I think she outgrew that. They were all good kids. Brian ran all over the county because he felt it would help him become more resilient for his career in the service. Terry worked as a candy seller at one of the local hospitals. I'm not sure, but I think Sal invented Twitter. If she didn't invent it, she certainly perfected it. The only contact I had with any of the children was through Terry. I didn't feel comfortable discussing family issues with Sal because she was too young and Brian didn't want to talk about it at all. After I left, Noreen sat the children down as a group. She told them why I left and apparently wasn't hiding anything. Brian immediately left the room and did not speak to his mother again. Sal just sat there and cried. Terry was the only one of the 3 who was ready to have any conversation about the breakup. Noreen refused to tell Terry why this happened. She just talked about it without going into details. I filed for divorce and everything went wrong. Terry called me and told me that their mother had started leaving the house in the evenings several times a week. She usually came home drunk. Terry said it started right after the divorce papers were filed. The children did their best to avoid Noreen, but her actions still had a negative impact on the family as a whole. As far as Terry knew, there was no male involvement. Brian didn't talk to his mother, and Sal whined all the time. Terry was the only one who interacted with Noreen at all, and then, as a rule, it was quite limited. I didn't like it, but as long as Noreen wasn't bringing guys home, I didn't feel like I had to pry into it. A week later, things got really bad. I was at work with Josh and Jimmy, 2 climbers. They were on top cutting off branches while I worked on the ground, feeding it into the chopper. Everything seemed to be going pretty well until I was approached by two guys who pulled up in a Dodge. It was common for people to talk to us while working. Usually, they were interested in what we do and what the prices are. I always kept a supply of Robbie's business cards in my shirt pocket for such occasions. As I handed a business card to one of the visitors, the second of them struck me hard in the temple. It was unexpected and led to the results he was looking for. I was on all fours, trying to recover, when they began to trample me with their boots. There was no time to think, plan, or take any protective action. They successfully immobilized me before I realized what had happened. The best I could do was curl up and try to keep the damage to a minimum. I'm not sure how long it went on, but it stopped as suddenly as it started. Josh tried to get me to sit down. I strained my eyes as hard as I could and noticed Jimmy talking on his cell phone and the Dodge driving away. It hurt like hell. The worst thing was that I couldn't breathe. Every time I tried to breathe, a sharp pain pierced my right side. This was my first broken rib. That's when I noticed the larger of the two guys was lying on the ground next to me. His head turned into a bloody mess. Jimmy and Josh noticed what was happening and tried to get down to help me as soon as they could. To speed things up a bit, Josh lowered his chain, saw down the safety line, and swung it at the guys who were kicking me. A dangling steel chainsaw hit the larger of the two guys in the head, and it appears he lost an ear. His friend wasted no time in getting the hell out of there. Even though the chainsaw didn't actually work, it left a huge gash on the baboon's head. After a few minutes, he started moving, and Jimmy gave him a good kick in the crotch. Apart from one hard blow to the head, all other damage was done to my body. I just sat there motionless until the ambulance crew arrived. I refused to ride in the same ambulance as the guy who attacked me, so the local police ended up transporting him in the back of a patrol car. When I got there, Robbie was in the hospital. The thug had a deep wound on the side of his head. His ear was not torn off, but it was severely mutilated. I didn't feel too bad, but the doctor and Robbie insisted that I stay the night. The cops caught the second thug in the Dodge before he had even driven 10 kilometers. After eating a mediocre dinner, I settled down for the night, but not for long. It was almost 1 in the morning when my cell phone rang. Who the hell could be calling me at this hour? In fact, who would even call me? Dad. This is Terry. We have a problem and we need your help. I don't think I can help you right now, but what the hell is so important that you call in the middle of the night? Mom's in jail and someone needs to post bail for her. Why is she in prison? She crashed the car and was arrested for drunk driving. Is she all right? Was she unharmed? Not really, but the car is in pretty bad condition. It destroyed about 6 parked cars before crashing into a fire hydrant. Was she alone? Yes. I don't know anything else. She will not be released until some form of bond or bond is posted. I didn't know what else to do, so I called you. Terry, we have a small problem. I'm not at home right now. I'm at Pottsville Memorial Hospital. Today I was injured at work and the doctor wanted to keep me overnight. I'm fine, but I can't leave. Maybe you should call your Aunt Sarah. She'll probably be more than happy to help your mother. What's happened? Why are you in the hospital? I have 2 broken ribs. They wrapped me up like a mummy, and I don't know if I can even drive a car. I'll be fine, so don't worry about me. I just need to rest for a few days. I didn't see the need to tell her how the accident happened. She had enough of her own problems right now. Can I do anything for you? Let's see if you can find out a little more about what happened to your mother. I'm just a little curious. Fine. I'll call you tomorrow afternoon and see how things are going. Robbie drove me to my apartment and put a few microwavable meals in the freezer. I asked him to buy me a couple of packs of beer, but all I got was some Coca-Cola. I could move fast enough to go to the toilet and feed myself. Unfortunately, I was forced to watch the Adam Sandler Film Festival all day. Just before dark, Terry called. Noreen was drinking with some people who worked at my former company. I thought it was interesting since I don't work there anymore. I had no idea she had any friends who worked there other than Dirk. They were just starting to have fun when the police showed up and arrested Dirk. Noreen became very upset and began drinking more than usual. Before closing, she refused to call a taxi or let anyone take her home. Terry was never able to figure out why Dirk was arrested or why Noreen was furious when it happened. We talked for a few more minutes. Terry was glad to hear that I was home and could take care of myself. They wanted to come to me, but they didn't have a car. Sarah posted my wife's bail, but Noreen didn't come home. Terry gave me Sarah's phone number. "Sarah, this is John. What the hell is going on? Your wife is a mess, John, and it's your damn fault." "Wow. Wait a minute, Sarah. Why is it all my fault? You left her, that's why. You left her with 3 children and just ran away. Who the hell do you think you are? Come on, Sarah. You know me better than that. Why did I have to just get up one morning, quit my job, and leave my wife and kids? Does this make any sense to you? Noreen said you were fired and that you were taking it out on her. Did she say why I was fired? She said you beat up a guy at work because she danced with him at a company party. Sarah, she didn't dance with him. She had sex with him, right at the party. Did she tell you this?" There was a short pause. "No, she didn't tell me anything like that. I didn't hit the guy because he was dancing with your sister. I hit him because he fucked her and then bragged about it to everyone in the damn company. She even gave him her panties as a token of gratitude." There was no answer on the other end of the line. "Did she say why her boyfriend was arrested last night?" "No, but she said you had something to do with it." Our conversation was interrupted by a knock on the apartment door. "Sarah, I need to go. I'll call you tomorrow." The policeman at my door was an ugly guy, and he was also my brother-in-law. "Come in, Toby. It's always nice to see family. Would you like a beer?" "Certainly. Maybe something cold." Hidden behind the cola that Robbie brought was Foster's. I had an attack of nausea because of the pain pills. "John, we found the guy who helped you at the station. The 2 guys he hired to beat you up were more than happy to point it out to him. I believe it was Dirk Franklin." "Right? I assume you know him." He was confused with Noreen. I tried to convince him to stop, but he didn't seem to be in the mood for it. He confessed to everything, so that will save us the expense and hassle of a trial. A judge will sentence him and 2 of his friends on Friday. I'm not sure, but I'm guessing he'll get 2 to 3 years, probably right here in the county jail. It's good news. Toby couldn't help but chuckle. "You're going to get revenge, aren't you, John?" "I hope for the help of several friends." "You're not going to get me into any trouble, are you?" "It sounds like you volunteered to help, Toby." "You can interpret it this way. I have to go. If you want to talk to this guy, he's being held in the city jail until sentencing. I'll come by tomorrow morning. By the way, how is Sally? Are you looking after my sister?" "I think it's the other way around. She cares about me." The hardest part of getting to the police station was getting in and out of the truck. I didn't know what was worse, being tied up like a mummy or not being able to bend over. When I walked into the room, Dirk had a huge grin on his face. "Looks like you're a little sore there, Mr. Esterly. Did you trip over a tree branch?" He seemed to like the grimace on my face when I sat down. "Welcome to Schuylkill County, Dirk. This is my territory, and I will make sure that you have fun while you are here." "I don't think so, John. I'm leaving here on Friday on bail." "Was it worth it? Not because of sex with your wife, but because I saw you tied up like a turkey. Looks like you've lost your job and your wife. Was it worth it for you?" I didn't understand the question. "I've never done anything to you that you didn't deserve. You should have just left it alone. I was better than you, and I still am. I think my wife thought so too. Well, now she's all yours. I hope you like it." "Oh, I'll do that. By the way, since you left, I've enjoyed it 3 times. One time it was at home in your bed while the kids were at school. You really pissed her off when you handed her the divorce papers. That son of a bitch did everything he could to piss me off. If the judge decides to let him serve his sentence in state prison, it will be more difficult for me to pay him back. The Dawes office was on the 3rd floor, and the old courthouse did not have an elevator. Not entirely wheelchair-friendly. Looks like one of the charities should have taken care of this by now. John Esterly, I heard that you are back in town. Elizabeth Vargas graduated first in our class. She attended Pennsylvania State University on a full scholarship and received a law degree. She married the captain of the football team, who was the only guy in our class to go to the United States Air Force Academy. They were the perfect couple, except that Captain Philip Vargas died in a car accident after they got married 10 years ago. The next 5 minutes were filled with chatter about the good old days. I felt awkward talking to her. She belonged to the elite, and I was one of the minor players. I smiled and tried to be polite. I was looking for a graceful way out. Well, it was nice talking to you, Elizabeth. I recently returned to the city and heard that you work here. I just wanted to say hello. Smiling embarrassedly, I stood up to leave. Sit down, John. The polite chatter is over. You're here because of Dirk Franklin, aren't you? Yes, but when I saw you here, I decided that this was not a good idea. I felt like a beached whale trying to get back into the water. I was assigned this case, John, so I know a little about what's going on. Everything is clear as day. He's going to jail. What did you want to talk about? I think that's all. I just wanted to make sure he gets what he deserves. Elizabeth Vargas leaned back in her chair and smiled at me. It was kind of funny because usually you imagine big, strong guys doing it. You're starting to piss me off, John. I do not like it. I found myself fiddling with my fingers and looking at the floor. I didn't feel comfortable discussing this issue with a woman, especially one like Elizabeth. She wasn't going to let this go unnoticed. Dirk Franklin hurt me a lot. Because of him, I lost my job, my wife, and my children. I just wanted to make sure his time in prison wasn't a vacation. Do you want him to stay in the county jail or go to the state? Do I have a choice? I can't keep him in county jail for more than 2 years. If I give him more, I will be forced to send him to one of the government institutions. She noticed that I was smiling. I think 2 years here would be quite enough. With some effort, I stood up again. This time she didn't stop me, but when I turned around, she said, John, would you like to meet me for lunch at Scripsy's around noon? I nodded, and when I gave her another small smile, she smiled back. This could be an interesting lunch. After I left the courthouse, I did a little shopping. I bought a nice shirt and new trousers. Previously, I only took work clothes with me. I also bought a case of beer. I decided that if I had to choose between pills and beer, beer would win. I wasn't sure if the lunch would be business or pleasure. This was the last one. Elizabeth returned home after Philip died. It turned out that she was receiving some kind of government compensation, but still needed a job. She had a 16-year-old son, Philip Jr., whom she called Second. After he was born, they decided they didn't want to name him Junior or Philip, so they settled on Second. It was difficult to get a lot of personal information from her without being overly curious, so I just let her tell me what she wanted me to know. I didn't say anything at all about my situation because I was afraid of being branded as a weakling. Currently, my self-esteem was somewhat low, so I felt an urgent need for protection. Before Elizabeth left to go back to work, she told me not to worry about the upcoming sentencing. The smile on my face quickly disappeared when I returned home. My 3 children were sitting on the porch with suitcases and travel bags. What the hell are you guys doing here? Nobody wanted to answer me. How did you find out where I live? Brian decided to break the ice. Uncle Robbie gave us the address. I don't see the car. How did you get here? Aunt Sarah brought us, but she couldn't stay. Brian stood up when I approached the porch. Please get the box of beer out of the car. It's hard for me to lift it. Terry helped me into the house. It wasn't really necessary, but I could understand why it looked like I needed help. Brian took the beer to the kitchen and Sal made everyone cold ice cream. I didn't know how long they were there before I returned. And why did Aunt Sarah bring you all here? She said it was the best thing that could be done under the circumstances. Brian continued to speak. He answered my questions, but I never learned anything. I took a long sip of my soda and wished I had bought a cold beer instead of a warm one. Under what circumstances? Brian didn't want to answer. The three of them sat and looked at each other. Finally, Terry spoke. A couple of days ago, Sal came home from school early and saw Mom having sex with some guy in your bedroom. Great, just awesome. Did she know who this guy was? Sal was sitting right there. I could have asked her directly, but somehow that didn't seem right. She didn't know his name, but she said it was the guy you worked with. I looked at my youngest daughter. What did you do, honey? I watched this for a couple of minutes. I've seen people have sex on the internet before, but it's a whole different story when your mother is dating a stranger. It was disgusting. I left and returned to school. Did your mother know you were there? I don't think so. Most of the time she lay with her eyes closed. In anger, I threw the empty soda can across the room. She bounced around like a child's toy. Children, have you already had lunch? No. Terry, how about ordering us a couple of pizzas? While the kids were sorting out their things, I called my lawyer and asked him to redo the divorce papers so I could get full custody. It was a risky step, but I decided to take it. After that, I called Sarah. She no longer spoke to her sister or supported her in any way. When the children turned to her for help, she insisted that they stay with me and even volunteered to take them. It was nice to have an ally of sorts. Sarah has already told Noreen where the children are and why. Pizza turned out to be an early dinner. We talked a little about other things, and then everyone left me alone and went to bed. In the back of the refrigerator, I found another cold Foster. The fresh ones were great, but they were still better cold. I took a painkiller pill along with the beer, hoping it would knock me out. It worked. Friday arrived and the verdicts were announced. Dirk was given only a year, but he will have to serve it in the county jail. He is likely to be released in 6 months. Normally, this would be a good thing, but not in Dirk's case. His 2 thugs each received 6 months, minus time served. Sometimes I don't understand the justice system, but overall I was happy with the outcome. Saturday turned out to be busy. The whole day was spent getting the children settled. Although they brought a lot of things with them, each of them realized that during the packing they had forgotten something. An afternoon trip to Walmart took a toll on my wallet, but it was necessary. By the end of the day, everything was as normal as possible. No one seemed to miss Noreen. When we got home, I realized that I was running out of pain pills, so I started drinking more beer. I had no plans to drive or operate any heavy equipment. The next morning, I was trying to clear all thoughts from my mind when I heard Toby talking to the children. I pulled on my jeans, but instead of taking a pain pill, I simply swallowed 2 aspirin tablets. Eventually, I had to wean myself off it. My appearance in the kitchen was met with thunderous applause. My family showed little sympathy for my woes. By all accounts, I drank beer because I wanted to, not because I had to. They were right, of course. Terry poured me a cup of hot coffee as I plopped down at the table, and then all 3 kids walked away as if they knew Toby and I needed to talk. We have a little problem, John. I was just starting to get used to the fact that everything had already been decided, and Toby decided to please me with something new. I tried to take a sip of black coffee, but it was too hot. I put the mug down on the table with a sigh. Okay, Toby, surprise me. What is the new problem? On Saturday morning, guards found Dirk Franklin in the prison laundry room. Someone beat him to a pulp. In addition to his broken face, he had several broken ribs and other internal injuries that we could not diagnose. This doesn't happen often here. Wow, it didn't take him long to anger his new friends. We don't think it was anyone new. Toby noticed me smiling as I took another sip of my morning drink. It was still hot, but better. It looks like someone let it slip that Dirk refused the services of an employee in order to get a lighter sentence. Although his thugs received less time than he did, they were not very happy about the news. We have no evidence that they did this, and frankly, we have no particular interest in investigating this matter. I stood up and refilled Toby's cup. He noticed that I was still smiling. That's the problem, John. The coffee was great, but the smile disappeared from my face. They had to transport Dirk to a hospital in Allentown. There was a guard looking after him, But Dirk disappeared last night. Nobody knows when or how. The staff didn't think he would be able to leave on his own, but it appears they were wrong. I never finished my coffee. I just got up and poured it into the sink. Toby sat quietly, and I stood and looked out the kitchen window. There was no view, just the brick wall of a nearby store. It didn't matter what I was looking at. I never felt threatened by Dirk, but the thought of him roaming free irritated me. A few moments later, I heard my brother-in-law get up from his chair. "John, I will keep you informed of what is happening. If I find anything, I'll let you know." I was still staring at the brick wall when I heard the back door close. "Dad, would you like me to make you some scrambled eggs?" "That would be great, Terry. Let me take a quick shower first." That same day, I called Sarah. She had never heard of Noreen and had no idea where she might be. I didn't know if this was good news or bad. Life began to get better. My injuries healed quickly. I took a job with a small company in Tamaqua where I had an easy commute. The children had no problems settling in. We started spending more time with Elizabeth and her son. Second and Brian seemed to hit it off, and I think I saw Terry glance at him a few times. Although I spent most of my time with Elizabeth at public events and with our families, we also began having a few formal dinners and going to the movies from time to time. Every 2 weeks, I asked Toby to deliver a couple of packs of cigarettes to the guys who beat me. There were never any conversations between us, but there was mutual understanding. Toby said they seemed to understand what the hell I was doing. If everything works out the way I hoped, it will be worth the money spent. Cigarettes were not cheap. Sarah and I never heard from Noreen. Did she go back to Dirk or somewhere else? And then one day, 2 of my opponents were released from prison and quickly disappeared. 3 months later, I received notice that my divorce was final and that I received custody of Brian and Sal. Terry was no longer considered a minor. She attended dental technician school in Reading. Elizabeth and I began to spend more time together. While all this was happening, I still couldn't help but think that Dirk Franklin was hiding somewhere nearby. Does he still harbor some grudge, or has he already retired? I could never be sure, and it constantly bothered me. I took a job with a small independent auto insurance company in Pottsville. 6 months later, Elizabeth and I were quietly married. The only condition of our marriage was that she should keep her old surname Vargas. She had several reasons for this, and I couldn't blame her for it. Elizabeth learned that Noreen worked and lived at the Salvation Army in downtown Philadelphia. Although we never saw her again, she began sending the children birthday cards. Then I started receiving postcards. They came at different times. On Flag Day, Veterans Day, Arbor Day. They always said the same thing: "Thinking about you, DF." Of course, I showed them to Elizabeth, but we still didn't understand what to do with them. They were brought from various places on the East Coast. At first, I threw them away, but as more and more of them appeared, I became more and more worried. Dirk Franklin was like a cockroach that I had no idea how to get rid of. Elizabeth did everything in her power to keep me under control. I appreciated her support, but I felt helpless. The card I received about 2 weeks before Christmas was more ominous than the others. "I have a special gift for you. See you soon, DF." Dirk had never shown any desire to harm any of the children, but I wasn't sure he still thought that way. I found myself constantly worrying about Elizabeth and the children. He left my life, but he still caused me suffering. All I could do was wait and be ready for his appearance. 2 days before Christmas, it was finally over. It was a regular greeting card, but inside was a clipping from the Baltimore Sun. The body of a man, identified as Dirk Franklin, was found today in a burnt-out vehicle near a brickworks in Glengarry. Police were unable to determine the true cause of death due to the condition of the body. The postcard was not signed. It simply said, "Thanks for the cigarettes. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one."